All right. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Going
Been
rogue.
been a long time going rogue. Danny, how have you gone rogue in your life?
Oh man, where should I start?
Right? I
I
don't
mean,
know.
really,
Where does it start? Was it something you started as a child? Because you're a bit rebellious. That's why you and I've always gotten along, for sure.
I think
Well,
that's
one of the
part of the
many
other
reasons.
part well, it might be the long-haired sister thing too. It's a weird dynamic because you don't back in the 80s it was cool. You saw a lot of guys with long hair, and now it's not. You see them, but they tuck it back, or they, hey brother, they try to be cool, and it always ends up weird.
Yeah, they
Um,
man bun it. Yeah.
yeah, they man bun it and they show up as yogis or spiritual narcissists, and you're like, dude, what's wrong with you? Like,
Let it flow, man.
I came here to enjoy the beach. Calm down, brother.
You know what
No,
else we bonded on is jean shorts. You can wear jorts like no other.
it's and there are things watch from life and history, and I think all of life is about going rogue. And I love the title of your podcast too, because um it's almost a call to action on
Yeah.
an active basis every single day. And you're asking the question, when did I go rogue? It did start when I was a little kid, and I just had a flashback to I was living in North Carolina. I was probably about 4 or 5 years old, and it was a big snowstorm that year, and it was historical. And North Carolina, that part of the state, Jacksonville, is where the Marines go hang out. And they're stationed there at Camp Lejeune. We had a torrential snowstorm that year, and I wanted to go outside. And I remember fighting with my mom. That's how young my memories. I still remember those memories from. I'm 49 years old now, and I still
Wow.
remember, you know, that long ago,
That's
arguing
good.
with my mom to go outside. So, um, but it did start with that, being in my childhood. I think, I even asked my mother too at one point in the last 6 months, hey, like, what was that like as a kid? And she said, you were very much independent. You were born that way. You were naturally defiant. Like you didn't, she's like, I try to hold you and coddle you and hug you, but like you would allow me to, but then you always wanted to go off and do your own thing. And I
Yeah.
thought, so that I think there's something to be said for that. There's some people that are born like that, and I very much do have that inside of my DNA.
Yeah.
So can't explain why. There's no amount of education or training that could beat it out of me. Um, I think like most people have, we've had formation through our education and indoctrination, right? To kind of
Mm-hmm.
control us and get us all on the same page. And the truth
Yeah.
is we're not supposed to go on the same page. We're
Yeah.
we're different individuals. So
We are. We are. And I think, that's come to light a lot more. Like I've realized how much I value free will. Like if there's anything threatening my free will, it just like it sends me to, yeah, I get so pissed. It sends me to another level. Like impinging on my free will is like the worst thing ever. And it could be anything. I just don't like being told what to do, basically. That's all it is. And like you said, from a very young age, I did not like being told what to do. I was rebellious and I was rogue from day one. Um, and I start to wonder, is this a generational thing? Because, we were of the generation of latchkey kids where we had to be independent. There was that. Um, it just seems like a lot of us around this age have a similar viewpoint, whereas I see like younger generations, and you have younger kids as well, not young kids, but you have 20-something-year-old children, right?
yeah, I have a 25-year-old. She'll be 18 this month. My heart's breaking. And then my
Oh,
16. So,
okay. Yeah. So it's sort of like different generationally, or are yours just like you because of the DNA, you think?
I think and that's a very good question. I think there's and my kids, I would probably consider them hybrids, except for my older one. My older one, because I was so young, I was 25 when he was born. And for a lot of people, it's like, well, in Texas, be like, hey, man, that's a little old to be having kids, don't you think? But, and maybe some parts of Kentucky and Mississippi, but no, even at 25, I'm a baby. It's 24 years ago, 25 years ago. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do with this child? But he basically had to come up with us as we're figuring it out, me and
Yeah.
his mom. And a lot of the things that we knew at that time and believed at that time and accepted and embraced at that time, we fed into him. So guess what? There's an element of that Gen X mentality that still gets carried with him. And he didn't, even though he got cell phone, he knew a time where there wasn't a cell phone, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
getting onto the computer or getting onto the tablet. Like those things were still, in the early periods for him, like 2000, 1999 was when he was born. So, you know, the advent of those things didn't start coming online until what, 2007, if that. That's when the first iPhone started popping out, or maybe a little bit earlier than that. But
True.
yeah, so I think that child, my oldest, is a hybrid of me and like our generation and what a millennial would be, or Gen Z. And then my children, my younger children, they're very, they're very independent spirited. They do what they want. They're very opinionated. I don't even know where they get that from. They have great, they're all funny kids though too.
Of course. I wonder where they get that from.
I'm probably thinking their moms, because you gotta have a sense of humor. I mean, if you, I'm just saying, uh, they they have a great sense of humor, but also a great sense of self and direction.
That's all.
And um, they have a different approach to life, and they do care at a different level. They really do. I think they see life for what it is, but they're also held by the constructs of our current society too. So is there much difference in that? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Sorry. I was taking a little nap.
Yeah, that was so weird.
Let there be light.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's interesting because my daughter, my first, is also 25. And I had her at 27. So similar. I was young, but not in like other standards. Like my mom had me at 19. But with those first, you're right. We're figuring it out of who we were. And so she's pretty much like me. She's very rebellious. She wants free will, spirited. So I think you're right. And my son, who's 22, he abides by the rules, but he's just smarter about it. He doesn't act openly defiant, but he kind of does what he wants. But his PR is so good, he can kind of just get away with anything and doesn't even seem like he's doing anything he shouldn't be doing. It's pretty awesome.
that actually is awesome. My youngest son is blameless like that. My daughter, very opinionated. She'll go for the jugular, and she has this weird fascination for wanting to explore the forensic side of psychology. Like
Mm.
I would always wonder. She would wake up night terrors, like, "Oh my God, I'm scared. I had a bad dream." I'm like, "Stop watching scary movies." Like, Friday night, or what is it, Fast Freddy's, or Friday Night with Freddy, or whatever. I forget the name of the show, but she
Oh,
would,
Nightmare on Elm Street.
yeah, stuff like that. She would watch all kinds of, like, American Horror Story. She was watching
Oh,
all these
yeah.
dark shows. And for me personally, I'm like, dude, that opens portals. Like, don't even mess with that stuff. Like, there's no sense in calling into the spiritual realm,
Yep.
anything that's negative.
Oh
She just
man, she loves that shit. I love it too. When my daughter still lived with me at home, again, she's 25, but we loved horror movies all the time and all the horror shows. And I swear to God, there was creepy stuff in my house all the time. It was just normal, door slamming, door shutting, weird stuff. It was just like, oh, that's par for the course. And since she moved out and I kind of don't watch that stuff so much by myself, none of that happens anymore. So if something is like weird, I know it's weird, but it's like, it is true. When you open that door, you invite stuff in, no doubt about it.
That's interesting that happened too. And that's a real thing,
It is a
no
real
matter
thing.
what you believe, there's think about it. We're eternal beings, we're spiritual.
Yeah.
We're we're made of the stuff that the stars are made of. And, we've been told that from the beginning of time, and nobody believes that. And it's like, well, when you understand that concept in terms of, expansion and growth, even as parents and the constructs, like we have a responsibility to get our children from a certain place to the better place, right? To teach them to be good, productive members of society, to be good human beings, to teach them morals and ethics and, the higher cause over your own. Um,
Yeah.
how do you nurture that though, too, as it pertains to being a commander of your own universe, being able to create your own world? Like I think one of the biggest questions I asked as a father, and I'm so grateful I became a dad,
Mm.
because and I'm grateful to the women that I had children with. There are only two, but like I'm very grateful that I had, you know, the ability to actually have conversations with myself in terms of who do I need to become to help them grow and expand. And
Mm.
it's gonna, like, Angie, your children, like knowing that you were defiant or you were rogue, like how did you actually manage that? Like,
How did I manage having children like myself?
no, how did you manage allowing them space to grow, allowing them
Oh,
space?
my problem is I gave him too much space because again, free will, like just I gave him a lot of autonomy to sort of learn, grow, learn the hard ways. And because my daughter being like me, I couldn't tell her anything. So if I said, "Hey, do you see how this is affecting you?" she would somehow make that okay and me wrong. And so I just kind of had to really sort of just give her the space to sort of figure stuff out on her own, knowing that whatever I said, she was going to preach her daughter me, do the exact opposite. So it's almost like I had to, I'm like, I counsel people all day, every day. I have employees I help all day, every day. I have clients that, but I cannot do the same with my daughter. And that was so incredibly weird. My son is fantastic. I mean, he lets me talk. It's hard for me to get words out of him, maybe because I talk a lot, but he can be very insightful. He's like that little lead by the front kind of guy. That's what he gets from me. And so it's a mother son thing. It's a lot different than a mother daughter thing. You probably recognize that from your relationships with your kids as well.
I do. And you know what's heartbreaking is when you realize one of your children is like you. And it's not in a bad way. I mean, you have admiration and there's heartache with it too, because usually
Yeah.
there's an opposition in there, even though you should be brought together, right? You
Yep.
know, I don't like the cliche opposites attract. I'm like, yeah, they do until they don't work out, right? It's like oil and water. But
Yep.
when you have two people that are very much alike and they're very similar, um, my daughter is a replication of me out of all of my children. If I were to say out of all my children, the one that's most like me, it's going to be her. Because I know how she thinks, I know what she says. And I've been the thing that I've been wise enough, thanks to the universe and to the creator, I've been allowed to be granted is the wisdom to let her be,
Yep.
to be in existence, to be herself, to be who she is intended to be in the process of expanding. And even if it means talking trash, you know, hey, dad, okay, that's great. And I love it because it's a reflection. She's a mirror, and
Mm-hmm.
it taught me a lot about myself. And but she's also representative of the better parts of who I am. And I'm proud of that, even if
Mm.
I get to watch from a distance or to be, and I know I'm not going to be number one. Like they say, you can't be number one in your hometown. So
They do? Is that a
like,
saying?
yeah, no, that really is a saying.
Oh, I
I've
didn't
met,
know that.
yeah, I met plenty of people. Back when I worked in country music radio, I had the pleasure of meeting a country star that was hot in the 90s. And Neil McCoy, all she wants to do is just give me that wank. But we would have conversations like that. Um, and I love Neil because he called himself the official brown guy of country music back in the 90s, which he was. Um, but Neil would come to the studio in Longview, Texas, where I lived, and he would sit down. He had his pink Crocs on and his flannel shorts, and he'd be like, "Hey guys, what's going on?" And he would just have a conversation with us. But one of the biggest things that he said is that you cannot be number one in your hometown. He said, "When I'm on the road, I'm king of the road. I'm number one. People love me." He said, "When I come home, I'm a guy who's got to get stuff done. I have to work. My family needs me. Um, am I important to them?" He goes, "Yeah." But he goes, "But I'm not number one, right? They're number
Mm.
one." And that was really eye-opening for me. And then I met Miranda Lambert at around the same time. And she was just getting started in her career. She'd come off Nashville Star, and she was working with a couple of other people, but she got signed to Sony, and it was the same thing. and we had a concert. Blake Shelton was there. He was married to her at the time. They'd just put together the match. Sony was getting ready to sign her. And we went to do a local concert. And you would think, holy smokes, Miranda Lambert's going to be a huge draw. Close to where we live, close to
Yeah.
where her hometown was. Not as big as you would think. I don't
Mm.
even think there weren't even 2,000 people there, if 1,000. And it was amazing to see that. And that was the revelation that said, hey, listen, you can't be number one in your hometown. So don't go looking to be number one out there. But out there, you could be number one to somebody. So
That's an interesting concept. I wonder if that's why I didn't get invited to any of my reunions. They're like, you can't be number one here. We're not even going to invite you. That's how little you mean to this town.
like, she's going to go rogue. Don't invite Angie. No.
Exactly. And by the
I
way,
don't care
did
how
she
good
even
her
come
hair
here? You
looks
don't
today.
remember seeing her very much. Yeah. She was like the girl
Her hair
standing
might
across
look
the
good
street
now, but do
smoking.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know there are people back there, but don't invite Angie. Her hair, it looks great. It's tempting. Don't invite her. She will
Yeah,
go
whatever you do.
rogue.
Totally. And at one time, because we had an open campus, so we would all go across the street and smoke cigarettes. And there was a Bartles and James truck in the back of this grocery store. We'd go smoke. And the guy went inside and it lifted it up. I'm telling my crimes here. We stole a bunch, ran, drank like 12 wine coolers, and then went back to school. Fifth period. I was so hammered. So yes, I was going rogue at a very young age. That was the
Those are
fun.
great. You know,
Yeah.
Bartles and James, that reminds me of Boone's Farm. I saw
And
kids
yes.
there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for us it's like Boone's Farm. And
Hmm.
I didn't start smoking cigarettes until, God, I think it was like, I was in high school when I started smoking cigarettes, but I would take them out back and get dizzy and stuff like that. And I worked at a grocery store, so it worked out pretty good. But
Oh yeah.
I try not to get hooked on that stuff too much. But Bartles and James, I remember that. If I had one of those nowadays, or even a Boone's Farm, I'd get a stomach ache and I'd be out for the rest of the night. I can't even
Oh
handle. Welcome to your 40s.
yeah. Yeah. And just cheap alcohol. Like, oh, the worst. The first thing I ever got drunk on was wine in a box. Those boxes of wine. It's like, yeah. Growing up poor, we didn't have access to like good stuff. So I didn't yeah, that was disgusting. I can't even smell wine without like cringing.
Actually, I just had a little box of wine last night and I got sick. So it was
Wait,
good.
they still make that?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they make it in the little, it's a little containers here. It's like, I'm just gonna have some box wine. Remember when Franzia was the big thing? You're like, oh, you drink Franzia, huh? Yeah, Franzia is great on a budget, I mean, I'm just saying, you go out there and, you don't have to be snobby about about wine. I mean, the first bottle of wine, you know, first off, it doesn't take much wine, right? You don't need a lot. And by the second bottle, you're not going to taste what it tastes like. So, I was like, it's box wine. If you can get past the first cup, you're okay. It's like, it's a little bitter going down, but once you get past that, you're good.
No, thanks. I'm good.
I don't know if it's
Yeah.
the cardboard or in the that taints the wine and gives you the nasty headache, or maybe it's the drinking too much wine. I'm not sure yet.
Right. You might as well just drink water.
Yeah, water's
Yeah.
good. I love water.
Hey, so I enjoyed where you brought up the whole spiritual aspect about everything. Is that something that you've believed that way your entire life, as far as, we're all connected, we're particles, we're all part of this thing, this body isn't like the be all end all kind of thoughts?
Yeah. It's interesting. And by the way, I appreciate you inviting me onto the podcast because the timing was perfect. And
Mm.
I had just stepped back into a season of yes. And to answer your question, yes, what you just said, that's the short version. I remember being a kid looking up into the sky, and the thing that pushed me to go outside and test authority was my desire to explore. I wanted to go see. And
Mm.
I would leave my house and my mother wouldn't know where I was for hours. And I would just go around the neighborhood, and I'd go to the back paths and the new development and go explore in the woods and the trees. I'm surprised I didn't end up on a milk carton someplace, but
Same.
it was the 1970s and times are different.
Dude, it was so great. Like we knew to go home when the sun started going down, or we'd start hearing moms like yelling. We're like, oh shit, I guess it's time to go. Like we were permitted like so much freedom, but also imagination. Because like you said earlier, we didn't have all the things to distract us, entertain us, and dream for us. It literally had to come out of our brains and our minds and create that world, which maybe that makes us better at manifesting. Well, I don't know. I can't say that. I can't speak for the younger people, but because we sort of we built that muscle when we were kids.
Yeah, we really did. I think you had to go figure it out. It's like, well, you didn't have all the tools and resources, and it's funny because I have a flashback to a kid melting down because they don't get an iPad. And I'm like, why don't you play with these blocks or go outside? Um, or let's go make something in the sand. I don't want to. Well, let's get some water. We'll make, a water park. Really? And that's, the power of imagination and creation that was born within each and every one of us.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's been written in text. It's been, produced in movies. It's been written about in songs. And I don't care what religion you claim or what background and I always tell people this. I was like, I don't care if you're an atheist or if you're a Satanist or you believe that you are an angel, from the kingdom of heaven.
Mhm.
God yourself. We all have the same essence of life inside of us. We were all made from the same entity, from the same being. And I just laugh because all of those constructs of the world that we live in, like religion, wars, education, our organizational structures, from society to our familial relationships, right? The way that we engage, um, being in relationships, romantic relationships, friendships, partnerships, um, all of those things are only part of the journey to help us understand who we are in our nature.
Yeah.
So in the human form, there's a cap on it, right? Because our physical body dies, we pass away, but our spiritual, we continue on.
Yeah.
And I really got a deep dive on that this year. And it happened when this last year, in 2023, my brother got sick. He was diagnosed with colorectal cancer. And he was young, he was 44 years old.
Mm.
And I was like, man, I was like, I hope he's going to be okay. And I remember that first night he told me, he'd waited for like 7 days before he told me. He'd gone to the hospital. He'd been in the hospital for like 7 days and he had just gotten out. And he's like, hey, Dane, I got cancer. I
Ugh.
was like, I remember that night just crying myself to sleep. I hadn't cried that hard in years, Angie,
Yeah.
not years. I like, here's somebody like strong and tough and regimented. He had been through a lot of very hard struggles and challenges in life. He'd been a victim of, physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse. I'm talking very devastating type of stuff. He'd been married, he'd been divorced, he'd been taken advantage of, he'd been subjected to some really hard stuff in his life. But he had a heart of gold
Mm.
consistently. And his joy was stripped of him, but he was tough on the outside and he would let you in if he really loved you. And that was the thing that I loved about him. Very generous. If he
Mm.
needed something, you wouldn't know it. If he had it, it was yours. He would give it to you. And and Tim ended up building this wonderful life for himself, but he couldn't quite find the love of his life. And the one thing that he wanted his whole life was to have a family.
Mm.
And when he got his diagnosis, I pretty much unplugged because I looked around at everything. So back to your question, look around, everything that we're doing here, at the end of the day, it's not important.
Yeah.
It's important for the purpose of exploring the nature of who you are and me and how I'm to help you. I know there's a few key elements at play here, and they're very consistent too throughout stories, throughout history. These aren't things that I might have been exposed to, but hold on, let there be light. There we go. Sorry. See, I'm a creator.
Perfect.
I keep bumping the cord. Okay. But I was able to spend that time with my brother this past year. And I will tell you that I'm glad that I did,
Yeah.
because up until 2020, he'd been looking for that one thing. And in 4 short years, he found the love of his life. She moved in across the street from him.
Mhm.
He moves in, he builds a house, he starts a business. It becomes successful. They have a baby.
Wow.
He had 3 other children that came into the mix too, because she had 3 children from previous relationships. He got to be a father like
Yeah.
that in the last 4 years of his life. And unfortunately, he did pass away from colorectal cancer. It was voracious, and he was stricken with HIV too. So he was living with that, and trying to, manage his health. And he always took care of himself. He was very clean, very orderly, but um, that cancer was too aggressive for him to be able to keep fighting and hanging on. And so if anybody has a colorectal diagnosis in your family, don't take my word. It's not a one size fits all for everybody. But what I will
Yeah.
tell you is that he fought. And um, I don't want to seem like I'm rambling here, but yes,
Yeah.
we are eternal beings. And a couple things that I saw, because I spent 5 weeks in the hospital with him last year, sleeping
Oh,
on the floor, sleeping on couches, waiting for diagnosis, just being there with him.
yeah.
While his wife took care of the 4 children, I was like, I'll take care of my brother. You take care of setting up doctor's appointments, and I'll get him where he needs to go. I completely unplugged from all the shit that I thought was necessary in my life, the shit that's not really important.
Yeah.
Outside of family, that was it. Nothing else got my attention. I let everything be.
Yeah.
And I learned a few lessons out of that. But family, I finally made that connection this year in my 49th year. Actually, my 48th year. I used to talk about it, be like, yeah, I'm about family. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. But I wasn't connecting the dots like I needed
Mm.
to. It was a painful, painful, painful lesson to learn. And it was also very beautiful. It
Yeah.
was very beautiful. And I got some peace around that.
That's good.
I got some peace around that. So
So you
I don't know
go
if that,
through that, and then there's the grieving, right? There's like the processing of that loss and the PTSD and all the other stuff. It's not like someone dies and then, you give them due diligence, you do the funeral, now you're fine. Like that lingers, especially somebody so close to you that you've been with your whole life.
that was the thing. And we don't see ourselves when we're little
Yeah.
the way our parents see us, or the way an aunt or an uncle sees us. So it's good. And if you're watching this right now, go to people that knew you when you were young, that could see you and tell you about yourself when you were little, what they saw. Not talking about your negative Aunt Nancy. I'm talking about go to somebody who's objective, loves you, is fair but firm. Ask that person. And my mother, she doesn't mince words, but she told me, she said, when you're a little boy, you protected Tim. You were always protecting Tim.
Mm.
And, Angie, there was a lot that happened throughout that year, and I'm talking spiritual battles. The
Yeah.
closer you get to death, to your physical death on earth, I didn't even think we were going to talk about this, but me and my brother, like, we had so many experiences this year that I have to document these in a book, because they were pretty profound, and I think they'll be helpful for a lot of people. But we were battling demons. He
Yeah.
could see that
Wow.
in the process of him passing away, his body passing away. And he knew, Tim knew. And we kept saying, Tim, hang in there, be strong. What do you need? I would cook for him. I would clean for him. I'd make sure everything was situated. At one point, I was dressing him out. He had a tumor growing inside of his body and also on the outside. They call it a necrotic tumor. And the
Mm.
tumor was feeding off of itself. It was its own blood supply. And there's so many repeated attempts to try to get that done. And nobody was brave enough to go in there and cauterize it, except for one hospital in Houston. It was Houston Methodist, and it was the one in the medical center of Houston. So if you're ever in Houston and you get in a bad spot, go to Houston Methodist, because Those people do care. They take care of stuff. Top
Wow.
grade team in the nation. I would put them up against anybody, even MD Anderson, or even the Mayo Clinic. What I will tell you, we were battling demons. We were fighting inside of our family dynamic. My mother, my stepdad, my cousins, my sister-in-law, even my own children. Like there's conflict. There's fighting. In my dreams, I would have dreams about demons where I was being held down. And there are different segments and scenarios where I was being separated from the things that were in my living life. So whether it be a position with a company that I had,
Mhm.
whether it be a certain relationship that I was involved in, like I was being separated, and these demons would approach me inside, and some of it you couldn't see them. And that was the crazy thing. It wasn't like a big scary monster, like right.
Yeah.
I was like, who are
Here.
these? Yeah, it was right there.
Yeah.
It's funny you said that right here, right? The
Right here.
demons,
Yeah.
demons come from within the dark side of humanity.
Yeah.
They're not actual entities or beings. They're the collective of our spirits that we allow to be created, so to
It's our
speak.
shadow side.
Yes, it is. So going through that experience, it's probably one of the best things that happened in my life. And there was also a lot of calm and peace. Like you said, the grief part. Um, I got to hold my brother's hand and be there with him the last week in hospice when he was there. And I will tell you, there's a great book recommendation, especially if you're going through this. You have somebody in hospice and you want to really understand the death process, the process of us leaving our physical bodies. Because it's, for us here, we're selfish. We don't want to lose grandma, even though grandma's like, my grandmother just passed away last month. She was 102 years old and she
Amazing.
lived a magnificent life. Okay. I had somebody text me and goes, man, it sounds like she got her money's worth. I was like, yeah, she got 2 lifetimes, right? I mean, if you think about it, but at some point, grandma had to go. Grandma had to go. She did the work that she needed to do here. And there's not sadness. There should be celebration around that. Um, for a case where my brother's concerned, yeah, I mean, that's too soon. He had just gotten his love of his life. He just became a father for the first time. He had just built a business. He was on track. He was rolling forward and he was on a mission. And his main objective was that we were going to build something to provide for our families once we were gone. And me and him were going to do it together. And we were going to bring in our other brother and sisters.
Yeah.
And that vision didn't get executed the way it needed to.
Why do you
But
think that is? What do you think the grand design on that was all about?
ooh, man. The problem with being intelligent is that we think we know everything.
It's the first obstacle is when you think you already know it, you're never going to learn anything.
That's right. That's why you got to go 20 miles an hour in life
That's
sometimes.
right.
But it's
And backwards sometimes.
yeah, and backwards. Yeah, definitely backwards. So I think the significance of that, for me personally, I think it was a wake-up call. It was a sledgehammer to my forehead. If you
Yeah.
take a tape measure and you take the average life expectancy, for most people, it's about, if you're a woman, 82, maybe 85 if you're healthy, living a good, clean life. And maybe not. I mean, you could be a runner every day and for no reason, like 47, you could pass out, heart attack, right? You're done. There's no
Yeah. You could
explanation.
also smoke and drink your whole life and die at 105. We've
Yeah,
seen
that's right.
plenty of
Yeah.
celebrities like Bob Hope and these guys. They didn't care. They're just, yeah.
They're just out there doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's no explanation. But for me, I think the profound realization is like, hey man, all the stuff you were going to get done during this previous time in your life, if 82 is the average life expectancy, I've already lived 49 of those years. I don't have much time left on that tape measure. Right. So
Yeah.
what am I going to do with the rest of this time? I'm not saying that something tragic like that has to happen, but we are so stubborn and we are so focused on not simply existing and simply being that we miss the big point of what we're doing here. And, I have looked at things that are not as important. It's not as important for me to have luxury goods, material things. I'm very much focused on being a minimalist at this point. I want to be able to live well. My main goal, go to the airport any day of the week that I choose, jump on a plane to anywhere in the world I want to go. That's how I'd like to live the rest of my life. And I'm working actively towards doing that. And I will.
Yeah.
I get to work with awesome people, but I also get to choose who I work with or not work with.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when I was going through the grief cycle, I had a real hard time after my brother passed because I didn't cry when he passed. And by the way, the book I was going to tell you about is called Crossing the Creek. If you're going
Mm.
through this process right now, there's somebody in hospice, read Crossing the Creek because it will help you understand the process of dying and what happens with the body. My brother, he knew he was going to pass away and he opted off the gummies. I found him some high grade gummies. We got him some weed, right? Everybody knows a weed guy or a weed lady. So in my case, it was a weed lady. But we ended up, he ended up opting off of that. He wasn't on the morphine because he wanted to be clear and conscious. And he did suffer a lot of pain. But, he told me, he's like, Dan, he's like, something profound I never thought I'd hear him say. He's like, Dan, you know what we got to do? I was like, what's that, Tim? And I remember he's laying in his hospital bed inside of his home, looking out the window. He's on his side, facing away from me. And I was like, what is that, Tim? He goes, I think we need to return to church.
Mm.
My brother studied in the seminary for 2 years.
Oh.
He said there were a lot of things that he saw there that he did not like, and that's why he did not become a priest, and also did not continue his Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
We're both raised very strict Catholics, but he
Yeah.
he sees that journey because of the things that he saw there. He said, Dan, there are demons there. And I always remembered that. But for him to say that in the last month of his life, I asked him, I leaned out, I said, Tim, what do you mean by that? And he said, Dan, he goes, the church is not the building. He said, the church is the people.
Yep.
Okay. So he was like, there are some very clear cut messages coming through during his last days here on this planet.
Yeah.
I got to see him. I will tell you this, Angie. And if you're worried about death, do not be afraid.
Mm.
Do not be afraid. Do not be
Yeah.
afraid. Do not be afraid. You are not going to be alone when you leave into the next plane of existence.
Yeah.
You won't. If you can physically be there for somebody, it's the best investment of your time. I don't care how important you think your job is, how busy your company is, make that time to be there with them. I spent a year with my brother. I wish I would have spent more. I spent the last 4 years with him.
Yeah.
Because I'd moved from Dallas down to Houston to be closer to him because I was worried about him. But the moment I stepped in, everything started showing up for him. And not because I was there. I wanted to be close to my brother because I was worried about him.
Yeah.
But he was already en route to getting those things. I just wanted to be close to him because I love my brother. And I will tell you that the best investment of my time in my life, spending that year with him, caring for him, protecting him, cooking for him, cleaning up after him, making sure he had what he needed, handling hard conversations, consoling him,
Yeah.
praying with him, being encouraging and supporting that. That's what I was supposed to do.
Just like when you were a child.
Yes. Yes. So that impact for me, the biggest impact was that. Now I really struggled with grief on this one. This was a hard one. And I don't have too many episodes because I knew, like, I had a dream immediately when my brother knew that he was going to pass. It was that Friday and he was getting ready to go into hospice. but the doctor hadn't come in yet. But that morning we woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning at the same time. I was sleeping on the bare floor in the emergency holding room where
Mm.
we were waiting for the doctor to come in and look at his exams. And 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 Tim's looking over the railing of the bed, and I thought, oh shoot, he's gone. Tim says, I said, Tim, you okay? He goes, yeah, man. He goes, look, he goes, I don't know where I'm gonna go, Dan. He goes, but I hope that you come and find me because I'm gonna miss you.
Mm.
And I got up and I was like, okay, like, hey man, I was like, you're still here, Tim. Don't like, let's see what the doctor says. Like, have faith, man. It's gonna, let's be
Yeah.
positive. You know, I'm trying to hold them up. I'm not wrecked. I'm focused on the mission at hand of like, hey, be present for your brother, be strong for your brother, and don't let him see you cry.
Yeah.
Don't let him see you break. And I really emotionally, I was not there at that place. I wasn't thinking about that. I'm like, I'm optimistic, God, you're gonna deliver, creator, you're gonna show us the
Yep.
path. Doctor comes in, gives us a full line out and tells Tim what his options are. And Tim chooses hospice. Tim chooses hospice. I was like, all right. So I leave. And I'm struggling that whole next day. Oh, I cried so much, Angie. I was on a
Mm.
wine tour here in Hill Country. And I'm like, oh, this will be great. It was one of the most beautiful days I'd ever seen. Clouds are so white and puffy. The skies are so blue. I went to a field where there were dandelions, and dandelions were so big and bright. I went with my girlfriend, and we were supposed to go out and have an adventurous day. And I remember I just started crying and kept crying. Met all these beautiful wineries, looking over these bluffs, looking down into the valley, and I could see cattle grazing
Mm.
freely. And all I can just think is just crying. And my eyes are burning because I've been crying so much. My eyes are puffy, look
Yeah.
horrible. I'm like, dude, you need some foundation. So I,
Need some cucumbers, get that
I
swelling down, man.
like, oh my God, I need some homeopathic, solutions. It was amazing. But that night I had a dream because I was looking for something and I asked the universe, I was like, God, universe, like whoever, I was like, I know you can hear me. I need you to show me what is going to happen. And do you remember the movie, The Never Ending Story?
Hmm.
Never ending story. And Falcor, Falcor. I had to, I had to go back and watch that movie. I'm like, that dog did not sound that goofy, but he did. Like, he really was like, I'm Falcor. Well, of course, Sebastian. And
Now I got to go rewatch that movie.
I know. Oh my God, Angie, you're gonna love it too. So
Nice.
I see this image. I wake up, the last dream that I have coming out of REM sleep is my brother riding and holding Falcor's ears. And
Mm.
he is flying and his hair is flowing back. His hair is a little bit shorter than mine, probably below the ears. And his hair is flowing back and he's smiling. And I woke up that next day and he's in hospice. So we spent that next week in hospice with him. And there were people that were coming to see him. You saw a chaplain that wasn't there. You saw a little boy that
Mm.
walked up, a nurse at one point. He was putting his arms up, reaching out. And there's an engagement where he's holding this teddy bear. And I'm sitting right as close as I am to you. And he's in the bed. And it's as if I'm not even in the room. He's just
Mm.
looking at this bear and he kisses the bear. He kisses the bear and looks at the bear, kisses the bear again and looks at it again, and kisses the bear and looks at it again. Then he looks out the side of the window. And I'm sitting here watching the whole thing. I even got pictures of him
Wow.
doing this. And I don't know what it was, but like something made me like capture that picture. It's like, it's a sweet moment. My brother's holding a bear. Because
Yeah.
Tim wasn't like that. He was very much a tough man. He was a HVAC tech and he was on roofs and boots and jeans and pearl snap shirts. And hey man, that's not how men behave. And where's my bourbon? Like he was one of those kind of people.
A
And he
man's
could,
man.
yes, Angie would have loved him. He's a man's man. He could fix and build anything. He was a great, great human being. Not perfect, but he was a great human being. And
Yeah.
the kind of guy you'd like to have as a dad.
Yeah.
He knew quality when he saw it. He had high ethics and morals. And he accepted hard truths and he dealt with them fine. And that's what I loved and respected about my brother and still do. Um, but it was amazing to see that. And I got to
Yeah.
hold his hand before he passed. And I will tell you, you won't be alone. There are people waiting for you on this side and the other side. Even if you're to die alone, someone's going to be there with you. So just from a spiritual aspect. And I know that's a lot. I know that's probably a little heavy. So, but
It's not heavy, and well, I mean, it is heavy, but it's interesting because I literally just did a podcast 2 days ago about my grandfather's passing. I was there with him. That was in December. And so as you're telling your story, it's reminding me of that story. Because I had a similar thing. And you know, I was fortunate. He is 96. You know, he lived a full life, all the things. It doesn't necessarily make anything better, but it is easier, I think, to handle than like your brother's age. But I went through something similar in helping him transition, and I was there. And it's beautiful. It's sad, but it can be a new beginning for them, is how I also view it. It was like, this is your opportunity to go have a much easier, better life. You did the hard life. Now go get and have a great life where you're appreciated and loved and you have all the opportunities. That's what I was telling him as he was not really conscious, but I know he was conscious and listening to me. So I
did you
appreciate
have
you
any,
sharing your journey, because I just went through it myself.
did you see him after that, like in dreams or showing up in your house or anything like that?
God, no, I wish I would. I wish I would. I'll get signs. You know, I saw butterflies right before he died. I saw butterflies in the, you know, the room. I did a tarot thing. I kept pulling butterflies. So I know now, like, when I see a butterfly, that's him. That is my sign. So,
Oh,
yeah.
that's butterflies are so important, right? The symbolisms, and that's, you know, there's another good book for you, called The Power of Now.
So
Um,
good. Eckhart Tolle.
oh yeah, so you've read it, yeah,
Oh,
Eckhart
yeah.
Tolle. I just got done listening to that book. I love audiobooks, but um,
Same.
and did you know, like the four agreements? There's actually a fifth agreement.
Yeah. I have that book too.
Yeah, they released that those two that series, and then you know the one The Power of Now. Great books if you're watching this and you haven't listened or read those books. It'll take you in a deep dive of just the essence of what are we doing here,
Yeah.
um, and how are you going to live your life right now? I think a lot of us get stuck in patterns, and you know you're talking about grief and breaking that pattern. And for me, I was able to break the pattern because I had so much compound grief, and there were complications of the burial and ashes and things like that. And then there's fighting, and his wife had cut us all out of the family, like cut off communications. And my niece is over there with her, and so we're cut off and separated from the family. And
I hate
we
how death can bring that just negative side to things. It's sad to watch.
it's really it makes it's almost an agitation or an irritation. Like, really, are we really doing this? Like,
Yeah. It's almost
look,
just how people deal with grief. They turn it into anger, you know, resentment. Like that's how they take control of the situation instead of just allowing the grief.
yeah, or power, right? It's funny. All of these things are illusory, right? There's power,
Yeah.
control, wealth, right? That's,
Yeah.
I think the things of this earth are they're important for the plane that we exist in. But I'm glad I went on that journey. And one thing I'll tell you, if you know
Mm.
you are dabbling in stuff like that, set your intentions before you get into them, because it makes a huge difference. If you want to get work done on a metaphysical plane or spiritual plane, for me, that helped. And I set my intentions around clearing my path, getting back to myself, because Angie, I did not feel like doing much of anything last year. If it wasn't my family or my brother, I did not care.
Yeah.
I had a couple of clients that I worked with, but outside of work, no, it wasn't important to me.
Yep.
It wasn't the most important thing. And that was a resounding fact of like, why? And I think part of that was grief, depression, sadness. People people should be grateful to have you doing this
Mhm.
podcast and to have access to you, because of the work that you do. It's not easy, and it's also not appreciated as much as like people should appreciate it. The stuff that was revealed to me, it was amazing. It was amazing. And it was real simple. And I'll sum it up really quickly too. It's like, we are an entity, meaning, and you said this earlier too in the podcast, we're all connected. It doesn't matter how. Like, you and I have spent time in different locations in Dallas. We spent time in Cabo, and all of the things that we've done in our lives brought us to that place to where we have one conversation or have a second conversation or even a simple hi bye, right? The things that we take for granted. And we completely disregard all the little things that had to happen for that one meeting to happen, right? That one engagement. And so I want to let you know I appreciate you. And the families that you benefited, not just the patients in your facility, but also like think about the 100 people too, the employees that you have.
Yeah.
How many people are inside of each one of their families, right? There's probably 10, 20 people that benefit from the work that you do because you hired one of their family members to come and work with you at the center. So everything is connected. The next thing, we're all warriors. Our jobs are to protect, and our jobs are to help.
Yeah.
About that. Now I got shadow. Oh, shadow. Hi.
That's okay. We're talking about dealing with our shadow self. It's very appropriate.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. This is how we deal it. We just get to a place and we put our shadows on the wall and we do shadow play. See, I dealt with my shadow.
Yeah, look at that. It's like, oh, that's great. No, that's wonderful. Yeah. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay.
So we left off. You were at the point where you were talking about the things that you learned, and you had mentioned warrior. That's where.
And one of the things that I got the revelations was, I'm a warrior. I am, I'm a protector. I'm a creator. And one of our main objectives while we're here is to protect each other, love one another. There's another one: forgive, 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 and then help
others and self. I think the self part is real hard for a lot of people.
You probably know this better than most people do. And you probably see it more than anything. People that abuse themselves or hurt themselves, whether it be alcohol or drugs or being in toxic relationships, physical abuse, sexual abuse. It not saying that people choose that, right? But I think sometimes there's a compound effect that happens when we allow that to persist.
Yeah.
And all we have to do is say, I love you. I'm sorry. That's it.
That's it. Yep.
That's all we have to say to ourselves in the mirror. I love you and I'm sorry. I won't do that again.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I did that. I'm sorry I hurt us. I'm sorry I hurt you. And it's the same. It's no different when, one of the kids doesn't want to talk to you, right? Like, whatever, mom. Like, why can't I be number one in my hometown? It's like,
yeah,
she'll come back, right? And that's I tell myself,
yep, the Saturn returns. It will. I mean, and like my daughter, it's a running joke. She's like, I can't wait till I'm 25 because that's when the cerebral cortex fully forms. So the day she turned 25, she's like, it happened. I'm rational now. And I'm like, no.
That's good. So I'm going to save my money between now and my daughter's 25. And then,
yeah. Good luck. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Like you said, they're just beautiful little mirrors, like everybody in us, either what we love or hate. It's just a reflection of ourselves. So it's interesting to navigate when you start looking at it through that perspective as well.
Yeah. And the question mark is like, hey, what are we going to do now that you got it figured out? I think, man, I hope I don't go yet. Like I have a lot of work I want to get done.
Totally.
Right.
Yep.
I wish.
Yep.
Like, what would you have done had you known this at 25 years old, Angie?
I don't know that I would do anything different. I don't think I'd change any of it. I like to think I was kind of pretty soulful the whole time. That's why, not the whole time, but a lot of my life. And I had to co-create the path that I've been on to be where I'm at today. There was no shortcuts, or I don't even think having the knowledge would have mattered, because I couldn't imagine in 1,000 years I'd be in this spot or feeling this way, in a good way, I think. So yeah, I don't know. I've enjoyed the journey, even though it's been a struggle at times.
But the needing and wanting, right?
For futures or for
No, in
what we,
human form. In
oh,
human form. And, like as of right now, like what is the need? What is the want?
yeah. Yeah. And that's where that imagination, critical thinking, and creativity comes in. Where are we going to dream next? We could get tied up in the just dealing with the day to day and survival and stuff, but where do we have the dreaming, which is where we create all this cool stuff? Like, we got to give ourselves space for that as well.
Yeah. It's so important because we are creators.
Right. Co-creators. That's what I learned in the last year is I'm co-creating this with someone up there. It's not all me, but it is a co-creation. It's not being done to me. I'm not doing all of it, but there is definitely a collaboration there. So why don't we team up? I don't quit fighting or guessing or second guessing and really do some big stuff.
Yeah. And it's pretty interesting too. Because I look at that now and I had to reset some new guidelines and new rules. And you probably know this too when you're going through stuff. Usually most of us we prefer to keep it quiet,
Yep.
right? Those who are true warriors, they suffer in silence. Um, I don't think it has anything to do with embarrassment or humility. In terms of being humiliated, right? It's not people weren't like, I'm worried about being humiliated. It's like, no, the world has enough problems. I don't need to put mine out there, and I don't need somebody to solve them because I have the same creative ability that everybody else has. We've all been given the same ability to solve problems, to think our way out of a box, or to have people in close proximity that love us, enjoy us, respect us, and care for us enough to help us without wanting anything from us, without having to put their tentacles in us, right?
Right.
So no strings.
Yeah.
And also, I think if you just sit with it, the solutions always come to you. Things
Yeah.
they're always working out, right? I think Esther Hicks says that, right?
Yep.
Follow Esther Hicks. She's like in the background, things are working out for me all the time. Things are working out all the time for me, right? Things are working out for me all the time.
Yeah.
And when you think about life like that, you're like, okay, that's great. Okay, sure, somebody might have like cut you off in traffic, but it's okay. It wasn't meant to
Yeah.
hurt you. It's just people making their way through life. They're expanding into the next place they're trying to go.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. And I learned there's our timeline and what we want to have happen isn't always aligned with timing. And so things it's kind of like house renovations. Everything takes longer, it costs more, there's more to it. But when you finally get there, it's super awesome. But like I had to um, gain aggressive patience. So like, moving forward with enough tenacity and capacity to lead, but not forcing and pushing beyond what was the divine way it needed to happen. And that's really hard to do when you're like a go-getter and I'm going to make this happen. And, here's my to-do list and here's all the boxes and here's how it's going to happen. And for me, I had to step back. I had to obviously keep leading, but I also had to just sort of be, which is really like we talked about in the beginning podcast. That's like, sounds a lot harder than I mean, it actually is a lot harder than it sounds, like to just be and not do anything else so you can have all the things you need and want.
it's funny you said that because as you're talking about that, I'm flashing back. This might sound crazy, Angie, but I'm gonna tell you this because like you and I've always been able to talk to you very easily and it's easy to be around you. I saw Jesus.
Mm,
And I
I love
also,
that.
no, I did and this is not a religious thing. I don't practice religion.
It's
The
Christ
last time,
consciousness.
yes, yes. And think about it. Remember at the beginning of the podcast, talk about symbolism. And they talk about that in the book too. Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. We identify our world with symbols. Well, who's one of the biggest symbols in human history?
Yeah, the big J.
The big J. So I look back and I go, one of the first questions I asked was like, why did you first the revelation was like, I've been here the whole time. And I started laughing. I started laughing like, of course you have been. And
Mhm.
then there's like this blanket, this wash of warmth, like a tidal wave of warmth, this big blanket that comes down. I can't see it, but I can feel it. And it's a voice. And it's like, it'd be equivalent to the spirit saying, you are so loved. We love you
Mm.
so much. And then there's the presence of who I interpreted to be God. It wasn't spoken, it was just interpreted. And he is explaining what it is we are.
Yeah.
He says we are one, we are an entity. And I look back at Jesus and I go, so why did you choose to appear here in this way? And mind you, my friend is sitting behind me, right? He's watching me. He's sitting on a lawn chair and he's looking over at me, but he is shifting shapes. Like he looks like a stronger, leaner form of Jesus.
Mm.
And my friend he's not, if you met him, he looks like a regular guy. And he himself would say, yeah, like I can stand to use, lighten up a little bit and, get trim. But his body morphed. And I look back and Jesus says, you chose this. This is how you chose. And when he said that, there had two meanings to it. And one was my friend. I was intended to meet him at the place where I work at night. My friend's bar that I help with. This is where I met him. And he had just been showing up. His girlfriend works here and he fell in love with her. And he's like, hey, he comes to work and he just helps her. He doesn't get paid. He just helps her because he's here to help her, make her job easier, make her life easier. It's wonderful, right?
Mm.
It's like she's got an assistant, but he does it because he loves her. He watches over her, he protects her, he's there for her. And he's been a blessing to her life. But I met him here, and it's just a very odd thing. But through my conversation and experience there at the river, I was able to see my higher self. I got to see her. My higher self's the divine feminine, by the way. I know that sounds crazy. If you,
I
it's
don't think it does.
no, I mean,
Some listeners might, but I don't.
no, but I mean, when you think about it, like in human forms, we think male versus female.
Hmm.
But what is life created from? Life is
Female, right?
life,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Life is life. It was beautiful to be there by the river. And the final revelation I'll share with you is there's nothing we need to do except for those previous things. We just have to be.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's it. And it's sometimes hard to do because we got conditioning, programming, people in our lives, opinions, survival. Like there's all these things trying to sort of pull us off the path of just be. And so it's I've been on a pretty big spiritual journey the last couple of years where I've really delved into like Eckhart Tolle and things like this and the divine feminine and masculine. Like I've really delved into that because I'm a woman, but I have a lot of masculine traits, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like if you can embrace both really well, that's the key. Like that's the best of both worlds. So we should all want that.
I think we forget too, we're the same though, right, Angie? Because you're half man and half woman, and so am I.
Yeah.
Right? It's just one is more predominant. But also the spiritual side too, we forget about that. It's like, is your spiritual self, if it were to be, let's make it simple, man versus woman, would it be more male, more masculine, or more feminine? And I think if you reflect back on that, I think people know the answer, for themselves. It's a good question to ask. Like, there's actually things that you can do, meditations to take you to meet your higher self.
Yeah.
I'd be very careful on the ones on YouTube. Some of them have like subliminal things written in them, and so you want to be very careful with that. The
That's
audio
actually good advice. I wouldn't even have thought about that.
that happened to me. I started listening to binaural beats to
Yep.
kind of calm me at night.
Yeah.
So I listened to those at night, but 528 hertz, 432 hertz. They have binaural beats for pretty much any condition. Like, oh, your big toe's hurting. All right, this is for physical ailments in the body, below the kneecap. And it's like you guys got really specific with that. So I imagine a bunch of musicians in a room going, "Okay, guys, you ready? Today we're doing 372 and a half hertz, and this is for people with knee pain." Xylophones, are you ready? Okay, great. Okay, bells, we're not going to need you until like the third measure. Yeah. So I imagine this, but
Totally.
I used to listen to them on YouTube, and I'm like, okay, this is a little nuts. Because I started having nightmares, and a couple of them were little graphics. So I was like, okay, I need to find a more qualified area. So I go to Spotify. They're pretty good. There's a list that I use called, it's like a sleep masters list on side of Spotify. And then I also, another frequency is the 963 hertz, which is the God frequency. So you probably heard it in reverse. 369, damn thing's fine. Everybody got to, it's the God frequency in reverse. So, but it's 963. Go and plug that in someplace. You'll be good. Feels great. Feels like you're dreaming on a cloud. Another thing that helps me too is with my spirit and cleansing my energy is listening to classical music. I will tell you though, Pachelbel canon will light up your dreams. So you got to be very careful with that. You'll have some very vivid dreams if you listen to classical music while you sleep.
Damn.
So yeah.
I listen to competitive cooking shows because I think it makes me better at cooking.
Does it?
I mean, I don't really cook that much, but I feel like I do a good job with the steak. like I got that down. The salt, the pepper, the perfect temperature. Yes.
Tell you what, my favorite cookbooks are the crock pot ones where you just like, hey, a meal in a crock pot in 30 minutes or 45 minutes, boom, set it and forget it. I like those.
Nice. Hey, so I want to ask you a question because you've referenced this a couple of times, and it's not been big for me, but it seems pretty big for you. You seem to get a lot of messaging in dreams. You seem to remember them and gain that messaging. And I don't really remember my dreams very often. Or if I do, they're so mundane. It's like, these are boring, man. Where's the good dreams? But they're just not a thing for me, but they seem pretty big for you. Has it always been that way?
No, not really. I used to have very vivid dreams, and that's why I started turning to. I felt like I was being, and remember, we're in the human plane, but we're also in the spiritual realm, and it goes back to what you're saying about like letting things in, like listening to and telling the story about your daughter watching scary stuff, and then she moves out, and then your house is clean, right? It's clear the energy's gone, and there's no place for it to feed because there's no live spiritual host in the house. So listening to those binaural beats, I wanted to kind of refine what I was dreaming about and keep things clear. And I'm always looking for truth and looking for a path. And that's because I'm exploring. Even while I'm sleeping, I want to make sure I'm doing some type of work that's going to be productive for my life, whether it be a revelation of truth, like, hey, don't stay at that job. Hey, maybe you should move away from this relationship. Hey, maybe you should cut ties over here. Hey, maybe you should stop, pivot, and turn a different direction. It's not always consistent. I don't wake up every day going, oh my God, that dream was so vivid. A lot of those dreams will come if I'm looking for something specific I want to know. I try to set my intentions before I go to bed. If I have a dream that's come out of nowhere, or I've had them where if it's might have been a dream about my ex-wife, or maybe maybe a friend from a long time ago, or maybe even family. Like I had a dream after my brother had passed that we were at my brother's house. It was just him. His back was facing me, but me, him, and then my other brother had arrived, and we were waiting on our sisters to arrive. And I called and told them, and what I did was I went and looked up the symbolism of house, brothers, and you look at the relationship, you're looking at the symbolism of it. There's a website I use, dreammoods.com. I'll go and cross-reference dream symbols to help me piece things together. Because it's kind of like the falling dreams, right? Where I felt like I was just falling, or I felt like I was flying, or I felt like I was drowning. There's symbolisms in that. It's tied to
Mhm.
our psyche. Um, if you haven't read Freud, Freud's probably not a bad move for you to help you understand psychology a little bit more. But there's so many layers to human beings. You know, like we're pretty layered.
Pretty
But
complex. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I get my signs, symbols, synchronicities, just observing, like you said, setting intention and then seeing the signs and then going, "Oh, I just saw 4 crows today. What the fuck does that mean?" And I'm looking up 4 crows, abundance. I'm like, sweet. Okay. I feel good now. Or I'm going to go walk on the beach. I really need to see a sign. And then I'll see a pot of dolphins. I'm like, sweet, pot of dolphins. Okay. What's that mean? So, and my team kind of makes fun of me because I'm always talking about this stuff. And I'm like, you guys think I'm kind of crazy, right? And they're like, no, it's kind of cool to watch. You literally just call it in, you ask for it and it happens, but you're paying attention because I think it's this way with everybody. It's just as everybody catching and seeing the signs. We're looking for them, so we're catching and seeing the signs. Whereas I don't know that the rest of the world operates that way, but I think they still get the signs too. They just maybe don't realize it.
I think that's it right there too. And it's something as simple as like deer or bunnies. Like
Hmm.
a couple of weeks ago, I walked out front yard and I was like, oh, there's a couple of bunnies. I pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Squirrels playing, dragonflies, mallard ducks. That was another thing from my sitting. I'd never seen mallard ducks fly over that river in my life. Guess
Yep.
what? They were doing flyovers like the Blue Angels. They're like, and it was beautiful too. It was like a symphony, and the hum of life. There's a frequency that we exist to,
Yeah.
and it's hard to. I could try to replicate it, but you know it. You'll know the hum. It's the one that makes you feel warm, and you're like, you feel empowered, protected, and you're guided. It's amazing.
Hmm.
But like you said, people miss that stuff. Like seeing a
Hmm.
string of deers. It's not going to be difficult because deers travel in packs, right? Deer travel together. Where there's one, there's probably another one, at least. But seeing an owl, I saw an owl in the tree one night up in Houston, Texas, in a neighborhood. I'm like, what's an owl doing out here? It's a big owl too,
Yeah.
and it sat up in the tree for a long time. I was like, I didn't think I would see an owl up here. Seeing an egret walk through a neighborhood, you're like, what are you doing here, Bob? You know, it's like Bob,
Totally.
Bob the egret. He's like, what? I'm just walking through the neighborhood looking for some worms. You know, it's like,
Yeah. You're
so,
like, but why? I need to know why, because that's going to help me today.
you know, and Angie, while you're talking about this too, and something that I do to get me back on track, if I'm feeling disheveled or unraveled, let's say you have a bad dream or you just have a bad experience or you're kind of stuck in a relationship or you're stuck with a situation at work or trying to solve a problem and you just don't have the answers and you've already exhausted your whole network or try to ask everybody that you can and nobody has a good viable solution or you still don't know what to do, take your shoes off and go for a walk. Let the ground absorb the ground is here to recharge us. The sun is here to energize us.
Mhm.
Getting into the water. I mean, think about it. All of I heard this was amazing when I heard this because even though I'm not a scientist or biologist, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
A lot of a human being's pain bodies are carried in their central nervous system inside of our atoms, right? We have water lining our back, right? Our back, I mean, think about it. The DNA that we have running through our spinal cord, the spinal fluid,
We're
right?
80% water.
Yeah, we're 80% water. So what do you think is going to heal us pretty quick?
Yeah.
It could be a hot bath, it could be a cold bath, it could just be a nice sit by the stream, uninterrupted. It could be you locking the door, putting your headphones on, and nobody's interrupting you. Not your employees, not your spouse, not your children, not your grandkids. Nobody. Just you sitting there. Like, but getting your feet in the water is fantastic. Getting your body in the water, even better. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah. I have no doubt I ended up moving here and living here for the last 30 years because the ocean is 1 mile from my house. And although that water is cold, it doesn't matter what time of year, I will flip off my shoes and go walk on the beach and let the waves and the ions and all the positive ions and all just the life be there. And I can't help but feel better and feel gratitude for all the things.
yeah, and you hit it spot on right there too. That's free therapy.
Right.
And I've been in that situation. I think living close to the river, it's been great. The
Mm,
river's probably about 50 yards from me. I just go
nice.
down and I walk down. It's probably about 10 degrees cooler than the surface. And the summer, it works out great because it's hot in Texas. But the water is cold year round. It's chilly. It's a good bearable temperature, but it's like when you first get in, that's what it feels like year round. And
Yeah.
in the morning time during a warmer season, right now we're in winter time, but I'll go, there's a big rock, and I sit on that rock. I'll walk down to the river barefoot and I'll sit in the river and I'll just let the water flow over me. It's breaking over some rocks and I just let the river flow over me for a few
Mm,
minutes. I'll go under, I'll submerge myself and dip my hair. You can see the water down to the bottom. This isn't like Galveston's water. It's not murky and muddy. This is actually, you can see to the bottom of the creek, to the
yeah.
river. And I love it. And it's beautiful. And I think people should do it more often, especially if you don't live
Absolutely.
by a body of water. Get you a tub.
Well, and I've heard that like when you meditate in water, it like exponentials the power that you have in that meditation because of all those reasons.
Yeah.
So yeah, hot tubs, pools, cold plunges, oceans, rivers, whatever we could do to get into that place in that water. Yeah, super key.
Makes a huge
I'm
difference.
also a big fan of the forest. So I think trees, like just all nature, really. But there's just so much grounding with giant, like I get in my backyard, and I know I brag about this all the time. I have a redwood forest in my backyard. There's no bigger trees than redwood. So you go there and you're like, damn, this tree is like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old. It's amazing. And how much knowledge and just survival that it's persisted through. It's amazing to me. So yeah, there goes the gratitude. All I gotta do is think about the forest and I'm already feeling good. No big
That's
deal.
it.
Throw
No, I
in some
love it.
fairies, some wood elves, it's like what a great day.
You said wood elves. I love wood elves. Yeah. That's fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Aw. This has been an awesome podcast. Thank you, Danny.
Yeah, thank you. I know we probably went rogue off the topic, but
That's the whole thing about going rogue. You could go fucking anywhere around. There's no straight line. Like it's all over the place. We don't abide by straight lines.
what, I will tell you this though. I'm glad that I went off the grid and I went rogue. And there's a lot of things personally I had to deal with this year. And
Yeah,
but I think it's necessary to do that sometimes. So
absolutely.
it's like a readjustment for your life.
Yeah.
Um,
How are you
and
doing with reentry? Because I've done a similar thing. Like I told you, I just went through, with my grandfather. I completely cocooned. I cut out everybody that wasn't my team or my kids just because I just didn't have the capacity to navigate opinions and thoughts and just other people, and not in a bad way. It's just what I had to do. But I am struggling with that reintegration now of even wanting to be around a lot of different people and energies and thoughts and all that. Like I kind of liking this like smaller, contained, less chaotic life.
that's a great question. And I think a lot of it is really keeping a very tight, intimate circle.
Yeah.
Um, but even with family too, like I have limitations on what I'm going to accept. I've been to see my sisters more, um, and my other brother up in Wisconsin. I've seen them more in the last year, and my son, my oldest son, lives up there, and I have a grandson that lives in North Dakota. So
Mhm.
I've made a concerted effort to just really focus on them. Um, Anything else outside of that, if we're not working together or doing business, I don't make a lot of room or a lot of space. I don't chase people down. Um, I know people are busy, but I'm not going to force relationships, even
Mhm.
with social media too. Limiting my social media time. I've been horrible on social media. I know
Same.
because social media tells me, well, your engagement's been down compared to 2011. I'm like, you know what? Fuck you. Right. Um, because
Same. Same. I've made like 2 posts in 8 months, and it's like, oh, I know I killed my algorithm and my machine, and I know, but at the same time, it's like I didn't want to feed it anymore either.
yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, what are you choosing to feed right now?
Yeah.
Reintegration is nice and slow. I'll have a conversation and I'll have another conversation. And then I'll sit down and go, you know what? I need to get really clear about what I'm clear about. What is it that
Mm.
you want to do? I'm like, I want to do this. And I'm like, nope, don't want to do that. So I don't have conversations around that until I say, this is what I'm going to focus on. So a lot of it's been a cycle for me to do that. I have to keep amending and practicing and going back and revisiting. Hey, at what point did I feel the best? At what point was I thriving in my life and in my relationships the most? Let me go back and grab a snapshot of that time and then look at the activities and things that I was doing on a regular basis. Can I recreate that based on the foundational structure of that? Working out every day, eating healthy, not drinking, right? Am I, not tied to materialistic things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is my purpose of building what I'm building for the purpose of what I think it is, or is it because it's a mimicry response of seeing other people going, I got this, I got that? And you'll see a lot of people falling out of the hole. They're not sharing their flashy cars or anything anymore. They're more like, I got land, or hey, I got cows, right? They're following a different trend.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not throwing shade. I think it's great. A country lifestyle is very great. It's quiet. A nature lifestyle is very great. But I go back and take a snapshot of that time and go, okay, I could be in better shape. Okay, I need to take better care of, finances and resources. Oh, I need to rebuild my business. You know what? I'm going to rebuild it differently this time. I'm going to create something different because I can do that. I have a choice. I have free will to change my mind at any time.
Yeah.
And to make it easier. And you know what? I'm not going to charge as much. You know why? Because I don't have to. Because I require less, because I'm not trying to fund a machine.
Yeah.
That's not benefiting everybody else. That's for the ego. But when your ego can't be present when you are being.
Yeah.
And when you realize that, you're like, all right, is that for the ego? Yeah, it's for the ego. Fuck him. He's fat. We don't need to feed him at all. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Oh,
right.
I've been on the same path, like all the materials shit. I just had to let it all go. I mean, I love nice clothes, nice this, nice that. I love being a fancy girl, but do I need it? No. Is it worth it at the end of the day? Probably not, unless it makes me feel better and it makes me money, but it proved not to be the case.
Yeah. Experiences over materialism. And that was the thing, like I went to see my family for Christmas and I told them, I was like, hey guys, y'all ain't getting shit from me for Christmas except for seeing me on Christmas. It had been over 20 years since me and my other siblings had all been together. And we missed that window with my brother. They each got to see him this past year. But we all missed that window to all be together. And we waited 20 years before we made it a priority. No more. So the work I do today, it's got to benefit my friends, my immediate circle, and it's got to feed other people beyond me.
Right.
So if I'm spending 30 minutes with you, or an hour and a half, or 3 weeks, or 3 months, my job and mission is to make sure that it feeds beyond that, the time of my presence. I give you something, I leave you something. There's something I can help you with to make your life better, with me not needing anything in return from you. I'm here to help you. So, how do I help you? How do I give? How do I help you to do that for somebody else? Like, you're going to take something, I'm going to take something that you gave me and say, guess what? I'm going to tell you an awesome story about a friend of mine. Yeah. She has great hair.
I mean, is it not? Is it not my hair? Like, look at that.
Almost. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I love it. Yeah, you are your poster. That's amazing. I need to get one now. So now I just
you got to get one, man. And well, you can see that hair and
I'm not going as fast as you, cuz
That's right. That's your new tagline, 20 miles per hour, man.
I love it. Low and slow. We're going to get to where we got to go. So
totally.
That's good. That's good.
Oh, man. Hey, so tell me, when's the next Apex Live? Because I want to come out for it. I want to bring my son because he lives there in Dallas. So I would love to bring him over for that.
Okay. You know what? We are supposed to have one. They haven't released the next one-day event for Apex Live. They've got them for all the other ones, but I'll let you know when that's coming up pretty soon. It should be like March or April. So January, February, March. It should be in March sometime. I don't think they've narrowed down the date yet, but I can get that for you.
Yeah,
So
get it for me. I'd love to come out, see you, see everybody, bring my son, let him experience the fun and magic of entrepreneurship with Apex and all that. I'd love that.
it would really be good. And I did that. I did that with my oldest son, and he had a blast. He's like, Dad, I didn't know what you did before. I was like, I know. I didn't really know what I did was that cool. So and it took somebody else outside of me to tell him, hey man, you don't know like what your dad does. And that was a huge compliment and testimony. We need people like that, you know. So I think that'd be great. It'd be a great event for him to be around other people like that, other entrepreneurs, and you know,
Yeah.
kind of have those conversations with people and see where they've been, where they've lived, the experiences they've had. At the end of the day, we're here to help each other. That's it. Because we're all we're going back to the same place. Good, bad, and different, right? Nobody gets out.
Yeah.
And I think we don't understand what that truly means. Nobody gets out alive. Nobody gets out scot-free. You're going to have to make some type of recompense or some type of penance before you leave this plane of existence. You will be accountable for what it is that you've done here in this time. So I hope, and that's not to scare anybody. It's not death and damnation. I grew up in the Catholic Church where they scared the hell out of you, but you know, no, I think it's just part of the agreement, our contractual agreement for us to elevate and ascend to a different spiritual level, right? We're here for a brief moment. So let's make it fun.
Yeah. Let's have
go
a good
rogue.
time. Let's go rogue, man. You know, one last thing I wanted to tell you. So ever since I met you, I have been visioning my own event with you introducing me because you are such a freaking awesome MC. I've already got my music picked out. Of course, it's going to be Pantera Walk, but you are going to introduce me and you're just going to make me look so good the whole time because you're so good at that. I can't wait for you to host my event. So I've been visualizing it for many years now. So just know, be on alert for that message where I'm like, all right, Danny, come on out. I'm doing it.
You let me know, and I will be there. And I think that'll be great. So it'll be fun. And I'm honored by that too. So I'm excited about that. I'm going to go get my Pantera hair ready though. So
perfect. I mean, you're already there. What do you mean?
I know.
Give me a little eyeliner and you're good to go, man.
You know what? My friend Dave, I taught him how to be a DJ and get on the radio, and got him started in his radio career. And his main goal was to meet. He was always a huge Pantera fan, and he got to meet the widow of Dimebag Darrell, and also owned one of his guitars for a period.
Wow. That's huge. That thing is worth a lot. They're going down in history as like one of the best, which is crazy to me.
He sold the guitar recently to somebody whose husband was a huge fan, and the wife wanted to get it for him as a surprise. And my friend Dave was like, I don't want to, but he goes, I will, because I've been into his house. I've met his widow. He goes, I've been to his grave. I've seen the essence of him, and I'm gonna go. He's like, I'll let you have it. And it was beautiful. It was great. Turns out we both knew the person that he was doing it for.
Nice.
It was good.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
what a great present.
Yeah, it was good. So I appreciate you having me on today.
Appreciate you too. Yeah, let's stay in touch. Let me know about Apex Live, and hopefully I'll see you soon there. And yeah, I'm glad you're doing well. I'm glad you got over your illness and all the other stuff.
I am. We're getting reintegrated, so let's reintegrate.
Let's reintegrate, man. I'll send you a picture of my latest sign and what it means. I mean, perfect. I can do that daily with you.
That's perfect. So
awesome. Thanks, Danny. Have an awesome day.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.